Hi, Math 7 students. My intention with this series of videos is to go through. My son is playing Smash Brothers, my 5-year-old. My intention with this is to go through the review with you, and I'm going to record this in multiple short videos so that you don't have to watch them all if you don't need to. So this first video is going to be the vocabulary at the beginning of the review, 5.1 and 5.2. So number 1, this problem, 3n equals 12, if you end up dividing both sides of the equation by 3, that leaves you with, these guys cancel each other out, and 12 divided by 3 is 4, n equals 4. So when we divide both sides by 3, we end up isolating the variable. I'm just going to write it like that if that's all right with you. All right, second one. A statement that contains those symbols to compare two expressions. So those symbols are greater than, less than, a less than sign, if you read it from left to right, the way that we read the English language, looks like a crooked L, less than. Greater than, less than, greater than equal to, less than equal to, or not equal to is an inequality. For example, in order to vote in our country, your age must be greater than or equal to 18. That is an inequality, which means there's a whole bunch of ages that you could be if you're a voter in our elections, which I hope that you all will be in whatever that means for you. Okay, third one. You can use the blank to remove parentheses in the process of solving the equation negative 10 times the quantity x plus 5 equals 40. So if we were actually trying to solve that, negative 10 times the quantity x plus 5, which means the quantity means it's in parentheses, equals 40. One way to solve this is to take that negative 10 and distribute it to the x. Negative 10 times x is negative 10x. And negative 10 times positive 5 is negative 50 equals 40. And then we remember that we've got a left-hand side and a right-hand side of the equation. The sides are determined by where the equal sign is. Our goal here is to get the letter x isolated, like in question number 1. The easiest thing to get rid of when you're trying to get a letter by itself is anything that's being added to it or subtracted from it. So we can get rid of subtracting 50 by adding 50 to both sides. We had said earlier that these two sides are supposed to be equal, so we need to do the exact same thing to both sides in order to keep it that way. If you put negative 50 and positive 50 together, you get 0. 40 plus 50 is 90. Now when we rewrite this, which a lot of people don't like to do, but you need to do this, we end up with negative 10x, and then there's a 0 in there, so we can leave it out, equals 90. And again, our focus is to get this x by itself. Right now, that x is getting multiplied by negative 10, so we're going to divide it by negative 10. Because negative 10 divided by negative 10 is positive 1, which means we're just left with this 1x. But since we divided the left side by negative 10, we have to divide the right side by negative 10. And 90 divided by negative 10 is negative 9. So x equals negative 9 is the answer. This was the example. And we use the distributive property. Distributive property to remove the parentheses. There are other ways you could solve that problem, but in this problem, it's the distributive property. Okay, vocabulary and writing. Write an equation or inequality to represent the following situation. 17 is at least 5 more than 3 times x. 5 more than 3 times x. 17 is at least, which means it's either 17 or bigger. So the symbol I'm going to put in here is greater than or equal to. I wrote an inequality for this situation because the description says at least. I used the greater than or equal to sign because at least indicates that the solution to the inequality is included. At least means it also includes 17, so it could be equal to 17. Okay, so that's the vocab section. And then in the next section, it was 5.1 and 5.2. You're writing two-step equations and solving two-step equations. I want you to remember something that we learned recently, not at school together, which is kind of a bummer because it's sort of a big thing. The order of operations goes anything that's grouped together, we usually refer to that as parentheses, and then exponents, and then any multiplication or division that happens, whatever comes first from left to right, and then any addition or subtraction that happens, whatever comes first to from left to right. That's usually the order we solve things in, but when we try to unsolve things, when we try to do it in reverse to figure out like the value of a letter, we do these things in reverse, which means the first thing that we sort of get rid of is any addition and subtraction. So let's check this out. Let me turn the page in my book too. Okay, the total number of students in the 7th grade is 9 more than 4 times as many students as are in the art class. Boo! There are 101 students in the 7th grade. Write and solve an equation to find the number of students in the art class. Let x represent the number of students in the art class. Okay, let's talk about that. 4 times as many students as are in the art class is 4x. So if x is the number of students in the art class, 4 times x would be 4 times as many as students in the art class. And then it's going to be 9 more than that. So whatever 4 times as many as in the art class is, and then 9 more, is going to be, we know that there are 101 students in the 7th grade class. So we got to solve this. The number of students in the art class is x, and that's what we're trying to figure out is how many students are in art class. And again, I'm trying to draw train tracks around the equal sign there. We've got a left side and a right side of the equation. We're trying to get x alone. The first thing that we're going to look to get rid of is anything that's being added or subtracted to the x. And we've got a 9 is being added. So we're going to start off by subtracting 9 from both sides. That ends up giving us, right? So now what we're left with is 4x equals 92. So 4 times the number of students in the art class is 92. So to get that x alone, we're going to divide both sides by 4. And 92 divided by 4 is 23. Somebody, anybody, tell me, am I right? So that means there's 23 students in the art class. So think about that. 23 students in the art class times 4 would be 92 students total, plus another 9 students would be 101 students in the 7th grade class. Excellent. So there are 23 students in art. Excellent. Number 2. List the steps to solve this equation, 5x minus 6 equals 44, and then solve it for x. So this is super similar to the one that we just did. We would start off by add 6 to each side, and then we would divide both sides by 5. So 5x minus 6 equals 44. So I'm going to start off by adding 6 to both sides. And that leaves us with 5x equals 50. And then we're going to divide both sides by 5, which means x is going to be 10. 3a, I'm not too worried about you knowing, figuring out how to do that one, especially if you've been pretty successful with the ones before this. So let's just do 3b. 3b looks like this. 1/2 n minus 3 equals 5. So let's start off by getting rid of that minus 3 by adding 3 to both sides. And that leaves us with 1/2 of n is equal to 8. Now, if you think about this, 1/2 of what number is 8? I have a feeling that most of you are saying, well, that would be 16. And you're absolutely right, it is 16. It's not always as easy to solve as this, though. Let me show you what I mean. If I'm multiplying n by 1/2, that means to undo it, I need to divide by 1/2 on both sides. And what we learned about dividing fractions is you have to take that second fraction, that 1/2, and you have to change it to multiplication, and you have to flip it upside down. So what would happen if we started this by multiplying by 1/2 flipped? Just to save ourselves some steps. Check this out. If I multiply this side by 2/1, watch what happens. 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 2 is also 2. And then you still have this n right here. And you know what, everybody? 2/2 is another way of saying the number 1. 2/2 means 1. So, let me bring that back up here. So this really says 1n. And what we've talked about in class a ton is that that 1 is kind of wasted ink. If all you see there is an n, then it's understood that that's just 1n. So why not just say that in the first place? So the way we get n by itself is we ended up multiplying the left-hand side by the reciprocal of that fraction. Well, if we're supposed to do the same thing to both sides, if we multiply it by the reciprocal of the fraction, and I know some of you were asking me to please do some fraction problems earlier last week, so let's do this. Multiplying fractions, easy peasy. You make them both look like a fraction and you go straight across. 8 times 2 is 16. 1 times 1 is 1. And 16/1 reduces to 16. So what we have just figured out is the value of n is 16, which is what you told me it was going to be over here. Now, the reason why I don't just say 1/2 of what number is 8, you say 16, and I say, thumbs up, nice job, you figured it out, let's move on, is because sometimes they use fractions that are really tricky. Like, what if they used 7/11? If I told you 7/11 n's were equal to 8, could you come up with that off the top of your head? And my guess is it would be harder. So knowing that what you really want to do is get that fraction to go away by multiplying it by the reciprocal, and then you're left with that letter all by itself. It's kind of a sweet trick. Although it's not really a trick, is it? It's actually math. What?